What's up, everybody? Hopefully you guys are doing great as always. My name is Itai, and today I am pretty excited because we are starting a brand new series on my channel. In this series, I will be analyzing the games that you submit down below via the Google form in the description. Analyzing games is one of the most crucial ways to improve, and it is not only the person who submits the games that will be improving from these videos, because everyone makes similar mistakes in chess, so analyzing a different person's game will also help your game. The one thing I ask is that you stay respectful. Don't simply bash out saying, "What the heck are you doing on move 15?" or "That was a complete blunder." Instead, make constructive criticism, because we are all trying to become better chess players, but we are also trying to become better humans. If you are not already subscribed, make sure you smash that sub button to never miss a video. Now let's get on with the game. The game began with the Scandinavian defense, which is a very common defense. And when you play an opponent that starts with the Scandinavian, you kind of understand that your opponent is willing to take trades because in the start they offer one. You take the pawn. This is my favorite move, and I think it's the best. And now black takes with the queen, and you kick out your knight on c3. I would recommend, instead of going with your guts maybe and trying to gain tempo with the queen, I would recommend kicking out this knight instead, because you need to think about your mini goals. When you play e4, a lot of times you want to castle on the king's side. So you need to think, you want to develop these pieces rather than these pieces to be able to get to that goal. So you need to think about your mini goals, and this time it would be castling. Where do you want to castle, okay? And that helps you understand which pieces you want to develop, okay? Regardless, this move was played, which is all right. And then the queen it has to move, obviously, and the queen moves here. Now, moving the queen here is a lot better. The reason that moving the queen here is a lot better is that the queen here, it still controls some of the center squares, and it doesn't block any of black's major pawns. Here, the queen controls a lot of the squares. It comes with check, so it looks like a pretty good queen, but it stops the only central pawn that black has, and obviously you want the central pawn to be in the center. So this is a huge mistake where now the queen is blocking an important pawn for black. Additionally, this check is not a big deal for white because it encourages white to move out their bishop, which is something that white would have had to do eventually if they wanted to castle. So in fact, this move here, it isn't good for black, and it actually helps out white quite a lot. A lot of times this move comes with this bishop to move here, because now you have two pieces, I guess, attacking over here, and the bishop can obviously not take because of this pin. But I would recommend, rather than playing h3, which is probably in your head as one of the options, I would recommend ignoring this threat here, because it isn't really a threat. You have so many ways to defend. And instead, I would play maybe a move like this, where now you're questioning the queen here. And yes, black can take, as obviously you have this, but I think that this is a lot more pleasant than starting to move your h3 pawn, where black, nothing has changed for black. Black can either take or even push back and maintain this pressure here. Okay, so I would recommend not pushing your pawns forward, especially if you want eventually your king to castle there, right? Moving the pawn here might create some weaknesses later on, especially where these bishops, the dark square pieces, the dark square bishop and the queen, can easily be aligned and can penetrate this square here. Also, obviously, this just encourages a trade to happen, which is what happens. Now, I think the engine believes that this is a better move, but I actually like this move a lot too, because now you're preparing to castle. So I would say good job capturing with the right piece. You're preparing to castle. And only now do you really play d4. I would have played it earlier, but it's all right. You still managed to play it, and this is a wonderful move because you obviously want your central pawn to be in the center, and with this move you're also kicking the queen out, right? So it comes as a I guess a double move, because you're playing a good move for your pawn, and you're also coming with tempo on the queen. The queen moves here, and this isn't a pin where, you know, by moving the knight, white is going to lose material, but this is still a pin because if the knight were to move, right? Let's say the knight moves here, and after black captures, then you either have to lose your castling rights by capturing with the king, or you have to capture with the knight and then undevelop a piece. So both options are not great. So this is some sort of a pin. So here castling is wonderful because now you free your knight. Because now if the knight were to go here and you were to capture, you can capture with the rook. And if anything, it gives this rook this nice semi-open file here. Okay, so this is it's a great time to castle. The game continues. You can see that black castles here. And now this is a little bit of a mistake because you're just pushing your pawn. You're overextending your pawn. You never want to overextend your pawn, especially if it's a pawn. Especially if it's a pawn that the pawns on either side of it are either gone, like the pawn here on the e file, or they are blocked, like the pawn here on the c file by the knight. So this pawn here, the second you push it, it becomes very lonely. And now it's in black's half, right? So it's just attacked so many times, especially once you play this move. And it's very hard for you to maintain this pawn, okay? So you always want to think, are my pieces safe, right? You never want to overextend a piece where now it's in black's territory and you've given it up, right? So here the game continues and you'll see that you lose the pawn, okay? Now, losing a pawn, especially this early in the game, it isn't a huge deal. A lot of gambits begin with you losing a pawn, so it isn't a great deal unless you make a mistake and you would decide to simplify things. You decide to trade. I made a video about when you should trade, and this is when you should not trade. You should never trade when you are down material, because by trading, you make the pawn that you no longer have, the pawn that black has extra, you make it a lot more apparent, and you'll see what I mean. Black goes in, or white and black, the two players, they go into this series of trading. First the queens, then the knights, and the rooks. And now notice that before, the pawn that you were down, it doesn't look like a huge deal. You can't really tell that black is in a winning position, because black is not in a winning position. This is still complex, and there's still a lot of pieces. But once you've simplified and taken away some of those pieces, you can see that now it looks a lot better for black. White has a lot of troubles with the pawn. They have 3 pawn islands, and also they have doubled pawns on the c file. Additionally, they have some undeveloped pieces and a knight that isn't in a great square. Black has not developed anything, but sometimes having no developed pieces is better than having troublesome pieces, right? These are not great pieces. So I would definitely take the side of black in this case. And you see that compared to this position, it's a lot more obvious that black has the advantage, okay? So do not trade if you are down in material. That is a key takeaway here. The game continues though, and here is when black starts to make some questionable moves. I'll just let the next few moves run. And notice what black has done. Black has just moved 3 pawns, also having to move here because of this check. But black has moved 3 pawns where white has managed to develop both of the pieces. So this, I would say, it's a wonderful job that you've done. Especially when you are down in material, you need to use all of your pieces. So having them in nice nice places is great. So you've done great to be able to develop your pieces, and black has not. Black, instead, I would have said already from the get-go, play a move like this. Take some control of the center, because right now what you're lacking is control in the center. And you see that after the moves that were played, white has tremendous control on the center. You can see that white has a lot of control on the center compared to black, who only really has one piece that has an influence on the center. So you've given away, as black, the center. Okay, so white has done a wonderful job, black has not. But black does try to now start developing pieces. And in this scenario, white starts moving some of the pieces away. It isn't horrible, but I would maybe start now trying to get maybe your king involved a little bit more. Because this is turning into a somewhat of an endgame, right? You have less pieces on the board and less pawns, and I would recommend starting to get your king involved. But nonetheless, the game continues, and you see that black now plays this series of moves very smart. Before, playing a move like this as black was not great because it doesn't really come with anything. Oh, the engine turned on. It doesn't really come with anything. You see that this move here, it doesn't come with anything. But now, once the knight moves there, this move comes with an attack. And you'll see that this continues. In a second, this move now comes with an attack. So black has done a great job to gain a lot of tempo by just making moves that come with attacks, right? The knight here, it came with an attack. The bishop here, it comes with an attack. So make sure that when you're moving pieces, or at least as much as you can, make them have attacks, right? And you see that the bishop has to move. And here an interesting move was played. Rather than moving the knight back, this move was played. I think that this is not a wonderful idea, because obviously the idea is once you capture, you are gonna win one minor piece back. But the problem with this move is that you don't want to trade. Once again, you are just encouraging more trades to happen, which is what actually ends up happening, I believe, in the game. Yeah, just more trades occur. And now this is even a worse position for you. Okay, so again, once you are down material, try not to trade. It really is helpful. Okay, here the game continues, and you win a pawn. Black wins another pawn. So this is again not looking great. And now white makes a rather bad mistake. You can see that. Well, first white manages to win some of the pawns, and black has done pretty bad. Black has moved away the rook at the wrong time. The rook here before was protecting, and yes, the bishop here attacks it. So white has done well to secure this pawn, essentially, is what I'm saying, right? White has done a very good job, and you can see that white starts gaining benefits from this because they start to take some of the pawns. But here, obviously, you have to move the bishop. And what you notice very soon is that there's a huge mistake that white makes. I don't know if you can see it yet, but very soon in the board you'll be able to tell. So black does a pretty nice job of clearing out these pawns here. And you can tell that white focuses on the kingside pawns while black focuses on the queenside pawn. So there's a bit of a separation of where the material is moving for both players. And now you can see that this looks really good, right? As opposed to before, when white was down a couple of pawns, white has managed to win back those pawns, and now it's even in material. This does not look winning at all for any side. This looks very drawish. And once the king gets involved, maybe even the king can move, try to move to here. It looks really good. But right now, I believe, or at least very soon, yeah, right now, you can see that, unfortunately, black has managed to do something wonderful, which is forking. In the end game, and also in the middle game, but a lot in the end game, you want to be thinking about where can I use tactics to gain even just a pawn, but here, obviously, a big piece. And you can see that once the king moves, you lose your bishop, and it looks pretty bad for you right now. The game isn't over. It's never over, especially when you have pawns that can promote, but it doesn't look great. Okay, so this was not a wonderful move by you, but you just need to continue going, right? You still have an objective, which is to promote your pawns. The game continues, and you'll see that when the game starts going very badly for white is when black starts using both of its pawns, which is something that white has not done. If white focused more on pushing all pawns that they have, then maybe this game could have even gone differently. But black simply makes very smart choices, and you'll see that even though they lose the knight here, they have two pawns, and now there's nothing that white can do. Here, obviously, the best move, I mean, I don't even know if it's the best move, but maybe you should take the queen. It's right now, it is a loss. You can check one last time, but this is indeed a loss, okay? So the main takeaways from this game, if we look back, is first off, understand your opponent, understand that your opponent will be willing to trade, which is why when you allow your trades to happen, right here, when you allow the trades to happen, no surprise that your opponent trades everything, right? Your opponent trades literally everything they can. Also, don't not trade if you're down material, and it'll lead you in a bad position, which is what happened here. So there are some key takeaways here. Now, I do ask of you one more thing, which is comment down how the series is. Do you want me to go a little slower, a little more in depth? Maybe I went too much in depth. How was the pace of this video? And how can I improve these videos? Because this is a new series, and like everything new, I am down for suggestions and any input that you guys have. Regardless, hopefully you watched this. This was a much longer video because I'm analyzing a full-length game, but hopefully you enjoyed this, you learned something from it, and I'll see you guys next time.